You're listening to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, episode 251.
Welcome to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, where we take a research-based, trauma-informed, and results-focused approach to quitting porn. This approach has been revolutionary and changed thousands and thousands of lives. I'm your host, Sarah Brewer.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Jessica Farmer. I'm a coach at the Center for Overcoming Pornography, and I work one-on-one with clients, and I also specialize in relationships here in the program. I am super excited to talk about our topic today. This is one that has been on my mind for a while, and it's something that I'm always getting questions about on our relationship calls in the program in Overcoming Pornography for Good. So I wanted to bring it here to the podcast. And that is how to talk to your partner about sex or like your sexuality or things that you're learning about your sexual self, or even like, how do I talk to my partner about things that I like sexually that they may not be okay with or they may not like pornography. So we're going to talk about it today. We're going to dive in, and I'm going to give you some ways to kind of prep for those conversations, how to actually like engage in the conversations without getting dysregulated yourself, right? Without getting kind of knocked off balance, because that's super easy to happen. It's super easy for that to happen in those conversations. And then I want to talk a little bit about how to repair and reconnect when those conversations don't go so well. Like when you do get thrown off balance or when there's a lot of emotions involved. How do we repair and reconnect so that we can keep the ball rolling in the relationship? Okay. So first of all, like the very first question that comes to my mind is like, okay, why is it so hard to talk about sex in the first place? And as I say that, you're probably like, well, duh. We all know why it's hard, especially when pornography is involved. There's so much first of all, in our culture in general, we don't talk about how to talk about sex, right? Our culture for centuries has been to really shut down any kind of communication, any kind of conversations about sex in a non-shaming, without any kind of agenda, right? That's really hard for us to do because we're not taught how to do it in our culture. And then when porn use enters the picture, there's so much shame. Like we have a lot of internalized shame, but we can also kind of get some shame from our partner because they're going to have lots of ideas and thoughts about porn use and what it means to have a partner who is struggling with porn use, right? Another thing is that another reason why it's hard is because it's just like that natural kind of primitive part of ourselves is very afraid of rejection. And sex is a very vulnerable thing, right? It's a vulnerable part of ourselves. It's a very deep, like primitive part of ourselves. And it's hard to expose that side of ourselves to people when there's kind of this like shame cloud hanging over your head and have that risk of rejection. So even kind of on a very deep primitive level, we are resistant to the idea of being open and honest and talking about sex. You know, there's lots and lots of really good reasons why this doesn't come natural to us in general. And so if you're struggling with that, first of all, like that totally makes sense, right? This is something that a lot of us feel a lot of resistance to. I kind of alluded to this in just now, but like I want to specifically focus on how it can be difficult for a partner for someone who has a partner who struggles with porn use, how it can be particularly tricky to talk about sex in that kind of relationship. So, to kind of talking about it from like, we want to gain some understanding from the partner's perspective of why it can be difficult. So if I'm with somebody and I'm struggling with pornography use, I want to understand why my partner can get kind of worked up and dysregulated when I bring up sexual issues. And that's because if you have a partner who struggles with pornography use, there can be, again, like that vulnerability. It is kind of a different flavor of vulnerability, but it's like, okay, my partner has had a lot of experience in viewing sexual situations through porn. And am I going to be good enough? Right? Like, am I going to measure up to that? And there's like an inherent vulnerability of like, am I good enough for them? Am I enough? Right. So there's that feeling of vulnerability and that fear of rejection, just a slightly different flavor. Right. There can also be there can be issues of betrayal. Right. Like, if there's been a lot of lying in the past about pornography use, then any kind of sexual communication can bring up some of those feelings of betrayal and fear and distrust. So that's a whole nother level of difficulty that we have when talking about sex with our partners. There's also just this element of differing expectations, right? We all have different experiences with our sexuality and how we express that. And so if we're not in a place where we can talk openly about it, we have these different expectations and that are kind of fueling our thoughts and our feelings around sex, and we're not collaborating on it. And so there's naturally going to be some dissonance that comes up, which is going to lead to defensiveness and can really become disruptive in the relationship. So lots and lots of reasons why these conversations are hard. So if you've ever felt anxious or guilty or unsure or just a lot of ugh, feelings about talking about sex with your partner, you are definitely not alone. And this is a really common thing. And we're going to unpack it a little bit and figure out like how to talk about it without like blowing up, or on the flip side, without shutting down. So we want to just get really, really curious. Okay. So if we're talking about how to prep for the conversation, I have a few questions that you want to spend some time exploring for yourself before you go into the conversation, right? This is definitely not a conversation that you want to be having on the fly, especially if you're not used to it. So do a little prep work, right? Ask yourself some questions. First of all, like, as I'm going into this conversation, what do I want to communicate? What's the point of the conversation? Like, do I have a goal in this conversation? Like, for example, maybe there's something that I have really been wanting to try sexually with my partner that I have been really nervous about bringing up. Maybe that's the goal of the conversation, is just to be open and honest with my partner about what I'm interested in sexually. As you can imagine, like, even as I mentioned that, like, there's that feeling of vulnerability there and like, oh, okay, I'm going to open up this part of myself that I probably haven't shared with anybody else, or possibly I haven't shared with anybody else and haven't shared with my partner. So being really clear about what is the point of the conversation. So in that situation, the point is, I want to be open and honest about what I want sexually. I want my partner to know this about me. And with that question, what do I want to communicate? You want to be clear about what the conversation isn't about, right? The conversation isn't going to be about me trying to convince my partner to do the things that I want them to do. That's coercion. That's manipulation, right? I'm not trying to convince them. I'm just being honest and letting them know what this is all about, right? What I am about, what my sexual self is about. I want to share that with them. That's what this conversation is all about. Okay. It's not about trying to convince them. It's not about trying to change them. I just want to share this part of myself with them. And I want them to reciprocate that. I want them to share their sexual self with me. Right. So, okay, that first question, what do I want to communicate? What do I want the conversation to be about? And then the next thing that you want to ask yourself before you have that conversation is, what are my emotions going into this? Like, what am I feeling? Maybe I'm feeling, like I said, some vulnerability. Maybe I'm feeling some anxiousness about how they're going to respond. Maybe I'm feeling some defensiveness because maybe we've had conversations like this before, and I know my partner probably isn't going to respond in a positive way. So maybe I'm already like armoring up, you know? So, what are my emotions heading in? And then it's your responsibility to process those emotions ahead of time, right? You don't want to carry those emotions into the conversation with you. Or if you do, be honest and open about it, right? Like start the conversation by saying, hey, I'm feeling really vulnerable bringing this up, and I am really nervous about this, but I want to share this with you anyway. So do that emotional work ahead of time. The third thing is to set the tone of collaboration and curiosity, not confrontation, right? This isn't me dropping a bomb in the relationship and then just walking away. Right? It's okay. This is what my side of our sexual relationship looks like. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. Let's work together for something that works for both of us, right? I want to be really curious about their experience. So, this is my perspective. Tell me more about yours. What do you think? And then being able to work together in that collaborative spirit as opposed to confronting and like kind of throwing this in their face. And one of the ways that you can do this is by scheduling this conversation. So giving your partner kind of a heads up so that they can prep too. One of the things that can really get in the way of this is like if we go into this conversation and we're all ready, but we haven't given our partner a chance to do their own emotional work to kind of figure out, okay, what do I want to bring to this conversation? Like giving your partner a chance to prep and then saying, okay, hey, this is what I want to talk about. Let's say Thursday night after the kids go to bed, we're going to take an hour and talk about this. Give your partner a heads up that like, hey, this is what I'm wanting to talk about. I want to talk about some things to do with our sexual experience together. And I want to just collaborate together on how we can make our sexual relationship better. So, okay, so we've done all the prep. We've asked ourselves the questions. We've managed our own emotions about it. We've given our partner the heads up. So it's the hour. It's the time to have their conversation. How do we have this conversation? So a few points. So first of all, lead with honesty and vulnerability, right? And that is so hard for us to do. We naturally don't want to be vulnerable, and that's totally okay. But with our partner, when we're talking about sex, we want to lead with honesty and vulnerability because vulnerability in a close relationship is actually strength. So we want to just be upfront about that. And like I said a minute ago, you can even start the conversation by admitting that, saying like, I'm feeling super vulnerable talking about this, but because I love you and because I want to have a good sexual relationship with you, I want to be open and honest about this. The second thing is to really listen to your partner's side of the story and don't just defend, right? Your job in these conversations is to be, number one, open and honest. And then the second is to really get to know and understand your partner's side of the story, because they're going to have a different experience, and that's totally normal, right? That's the whole point of this conversation, is for you to come with your side and your partner to come with their side, and to find a way to meld it together that works for both of you. So don't defend, right? Don't just defend, really listen and try to understand. And along with that, you want to validate both perspectives, right? Your perspective and your partner's perspective are both good, right? There are both reasons for why you feel the way you do. And so we just want to acknowledge that, like right from the beginning. We want to validate that both of our sides make sense and both sides are good. Neither is right or wrong. We're trying to make space for both. Along with that, we want to really focus on connection, not blame, right? It can be really easy to get into that defensive and blaming kind of cycle. And we want to always pull it back to that feeling of connection. The whole point of the conversation is to connect. And so we want to bring it back. If you ever feel yourself kind of going into, well, if they would just do X, Y, or Z, if they would just approach this differently, then we know we've disconnected. So pay attention to what is going on in what your thoughts are during that conversation. And if they are pulling away from that connection, take a minute and bring it back. Like, give yourself permission to take breaks, right? Give yourself permission to take that break and be like, okay, hold on. I'm feeling myself getting kind of blamey and defensive. So I just need a break. Give me like 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes. I'm going to recenter. I'm going to focus back on that connection. And then we can come back into this conversation. So a few things to, like, if you're kind of struggling on like, what do we even talk about? Like, I don't know what to even talk about. I just know that I don't like the way our sexual relationship is going, but I can't like pinpoint what it is exactly. Some things too that might kind of get the ball rolling is talking about boundaries, like things that feel safe to you in the sexual relationship, and things that don't feel safe for you. And being really open and honest about that. And that can be like different sexual experiences, different sexual strategies that you might have that feel that way. But it can also be like the emotional climate of your sexual experience can feel unsafe. And you can be really open and honest about that and saying, hey, this doesn't feel safe to me. So discussing boundaries. Second of all, discussing preferences, right? Like I love, then this comes from, I heard it from Amanda Louder, but like coming up with a menu, right? And using kind of a red, yellow, green, right? These are the things, the green things are my preferences that I love. These are the things that I'm going to be down for just about every time. Yellow, it's, depending on my mood, I might be up for that. It's not my first choice, but I'm willing to do it and I'm excited to try, right? That's your yellow. And red are the boundary things, right? These are the things that are a hard pass for me. Discussing those preferences, things that you like, that you're open to, but maybe aren't your favorite, and then the things that you're definitely not good with. Other things that you can talk about are how you both want to move forward sexually and emotionally. Like sometimes this can be a difficult conversation because maybe you've had some really negative experiences in your sexual relationship in the past. And now we're having this conversation of like realizing that the past is in the past and we're working on healing and recovering from that. And what do we want to build moving forward? What do we want our sexual relationship to look like? In an ideal world, I might be asking my partner, in an ideal world, like, what would you want that sexual relationship to look like? What would feel good to you? and having that conversation and like, okay, what do we want to build moving forward? As you're having these conversations, there are lots of opportunities to kind of stumble, right? Like there are opportunities we're not going to get it right the first time or the 10th time, right? There's always going to be those situations where you say something that might hurt your partner's feelings or that might be kind of triggering, or maybe you said something the wrong way. And that, like, first of all, let's just normalize that. Like these conversations, again, like we were never taught how to have these conversations. And so we're going to stumble. There's going to be situations where we don't do it perfectly. And that's totally okay. The biggest predictor in these the success, that's the word, the success of these difficult conversations, it's not perfection. It's not avoiding mistakes. It's can we repair when things go awry? So repairing, it's one of my favorite examples of this was I heard it from John Gottman in a John Gottman workshop. And they were talking about we were talking about repair. And he told this story about he was on a road trip with a couple friend of his. So he was in the back seat and the couple, one of the partners was driving and the other was sitting in the passenger seat. And during this long road trip, the couple in the front seat got in a fight over something. And, they're arguing and they're going back and forth. And he's just like sitting in the back seat, like, oh my gosh, what is happening? What am I watching right now? Like feeling awkward, But he's watching kind of this happen. And then after a minute, they just got quiet. And, he's looking out one window and she's looking out the other. And they're just kind of, silently fuming, right? We've all been in that situation where we're just like, oh. And then he said the funniest thing happened. He noticed, the wife kind of look over at her husband, and you could tell that she was still mad. She wasn't over it, but she just looked at him and she leaned over the console and got right up in his face as he's driving. He's facing forward. He's not looking at her. His eyes are facing forward and she gets right up next to the side of his face and just leans in really close and licks his cheek, in a big, wet, slobbery lick on his cheek. And of course, they both just burst out laughing. And that is what repair looks like, right? It doesn't have to be, that's kind of a silly example, but it's just that when there's been a rupture in the conversation, when there's a rupture in the relationship, repair is that bringing it back to this idea of okay, I'm still mad about this, and we're not done with this conflict, but I want you to know that I care about you. And this doesn't change the fact that I want to be with you. This doesn't change the fact that I love you. And you can do that in a million ways. You can do it by licking your partner's cheek. Or using humor can sometimes do that. Sometimes humor is not going to land, right? If you have these kinds of conversations, sometimes humor is not the way to go. But, it can even just be saying that, being like, you know what, things feel really heavy right now. And I want you to know that I still love you. I'm still willing to engage in this with you. I'm here for the wrestle. And I want to figure this out because I love you and because our relationship is so, so important to me. So we want to take that minute at the end of the conversation to repair and reconnect. And that's going to help this become an ongoing conversation. Sex conversations should not be a one and done process. This is something that we want to keep revisiting. And as you practice, as you keep revisiting this conversation, it gets easier and you're not stumbling as much until you get to the point that it's like, oh yeah, we talk about sex all the time and we talk about hard things and we're able to hold that space for each other. And it's made all the difference in how we connect with each other, and we're having the best sex of our lives. So that's the goal, right? That's what we're working toward. So I am excited that I got to be able to talk with you guys about this. I hope it's been helpful. When we can talk really honestly about sex, we're not actually just talking about sex. We're talking about trust and safety and truly being seen and being understood and being accepted. That's why we have such deep reactions to this, is because it's not actually just about sex. It's about belonging. It's about feeling seen and known in our relationships. And that is what creates intimacy. All right, guys, thank you for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I want to invite you to come and listen to my free class, How to Overcome Pornography for Good Without Using Willpower. We talk about how to stop giving into urges without pure willpower or relying on phone filters so that you can actually stop wanting pornography. We talk about how to stop giving up after a few weeks or months, and spoiler alert, the answer isn't have more willpower. And then lastly, we talk about how to make a life without porn easily sustainable and permanent. If you're trying to quit porn, this class is a game changer. So you can go and sign up at sarahbrewer.com/masterclass, and it is totally free.